Hi folks, I'm Frank James, and I'd like to wish each and every one of you a very merry, happy, and blessed Christmas season. Now I'd like to tell you a story of a very special Christmas a long time ago. It took place around 1950 or so. And it's a story about a very poor family and a mom trying very hard to raise her 5 children all by herself. Well, with God's help and very little money, we all pitched in together as a family to make it the best Christmas we ever had. They've all passed on now except for the one person left to tell you this beautiful, true story. I lived it, and I'll never forget that wonderful Christmas a long, long time ago. I remember a Christmas a long time ago. There was just my mom and her 5 children, of which I was the youngest. We didn't have much money back then. I guess you could say we were poor, in fact, but rich in spirit. But we had each other, and I guess that was the greatest Christmas gift of all. That Christmas Eve was very special for me. Mama was working many long, hard hours at the factory, earning about 30 cents an hour back then. My brothers Bill and John were out gathering wood from fallen trees and coal from along the railroad tracks, where some of it would fall off the coal cars of the trains that would pass by. We had an old stove in our kitchen back then that we used to burn the wood and the coal in. At home, my sisters Mary, Nellie, and I were busy making homemade Christmas decorations, from things like popcorn on a string and colored rings cut from paper and lovingly glued together one at a time. We had hot cocoa and homemade cookies that Mama had made from scratch that week. Christmas music was coming from an old tube radio that we had in our parlor. It was getting late, and Bill and John had already returned home to drop off the wood and the coal they had gathered for our stove. They left again to get in line for a free tree from the Christmas tree sales lot that we had in our hometown. You see, at the end of the night on Christmas Eve, they would toss the leftover trees like spears out to the crowd. If you were lucky enough, you could catch one. Well, I guess that night Bill and John weren't so lucky. By the time the lot had closed down, there were only a couple of trees left. They were so scraggly and misshapen that nobody wanted them, so they were headed for the fire barrel. Well, Bill and John begged those fellas for those pitiful-looking trees and got to take them home. Well, when they walked in dragging those trees behind them, we had all laughed and made jokes about those poor little trees. With saw, hammer, nails, baling wire, and a lot of imagination, we made them into one, trimming them with our homemade decorations. Mama had got home late that night, so cold and tired. She had to work overtime at the factory, and by the time she'd walked from her job to the downtown area, the department stores were all closing for the holidays. Frantically running from store to store, she found one that the manager had just started locking the doors. He could see Mama knocking and begging him to let her in so she could shop for presents for her 5 children. It was cold, dark, and snowing that night, and he could see her crying and near frozen. I think the Lord spoke to him that night, for he had a good heart and let Mama in to shop for her kids. Before going to bed that Christmas Eve, I remember standing outside in the cold, looking up at the sky and the stars, hoping to catch a glimpse of Santa with his sleigh and reindeer galloping across the moon. Christmas morning was truly a wonderful time for us. Mama had turned on some Christmas music, and we all ran into the parlor in our pajamas to open our gifts. Each of us gave Mama our own special gift to her that day. Whether it was something that we had made ourselves or store-bought, she treated it as if it were made of solid gold, because it came from the heart. There was so much love, laughter, hugs, and happiness on that very special Christmas, a long, long time ago.